Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features X-Men number 42, cover dated July 1995, and this is the first issue of the title After the Return to the Prime Reality. The cover caption is The Fall of Avalon, and that's what we get depicted here on the cover. The image is by Andy Kubert, inked by Matthew Ryan and coloured by Derek B. There is a colouring error on this particular cover, and it's up here around Exodus's head and upper torso. We've got grayscale but no colour, so that's something that went wrong with the computer file before it went off to the printers. We have a cover caption here, digital lettering on this, The Fall of Avalon. I don't know if it's terribly effective. The image itself, in terms of a composition, I don't think it's the most successful of Andy Kubert's work, but it is well drawn, I'll give him that much. But there is a design issue, I think, because you have to look long and hard to actually see the character that Exodus is fighting here, and it's down here upside down, and this will turn out to be Holocaust. We'll learn that on the inside of the issue. Another colouring error over here where we've got the unconscious Magneto. He's supposed to be in a coma after Professor X took his mind away in Adjectiveless X-Men number 25. And what we see here is it looks like one of Magneto's eyes is open, but it's actually a colouring error, so that eyelid should be flesh coloured as well. Let's open this one up to the first page, and here we learn that the interior artwork is not by Andy Kubert. He's taking a break after the Age of Apocalypse. The title of the story is Heaven Can Wait. The creative team is Fabian Nicieza, writer, Paul Smith, veteran Uncanny X-Men penciler, filling in on this particular issue and doing a very creditable job. Competent artist Paul Ryan is in this period of his work, but I feel in this particular issue he's just getting the job done rather than being passionate about what it is he's drawn. But there are a few particular panels and pages that are much more interesting and must have had his artistic interest, and of course I'll comment on and point those out in the course of the review. Matt Ryan, the ink on inks, Kevin Summers and Digital Chameleon on the digital colour art, Richard Starkings and Comicraft on the digital lettering. So here we have Exodus, and he's enjoying a glass of champagne, something like that, toasting the arrival of this particular figure that was picked up outside Avalon in X-Men Prime. And he sees it as a sign and wonder, a new dawn for mutant kind. So we've got the gathered acolytes here. Colossus was instrumental in bringing the mysterious figure into Avalon. We have Milan here on the computers in the med lab of Avalon. So Exodus here is talking about how this strange and wondrous being has come to us, born upon the magnetic tides which ebb and flow around our home, and in coming has invigorated us all. Now those magnetic tides that ebb and flow around Avalon, that's interesting because of course it implies that subconsciously, at least, Magneto is exerting his power around Avalon. So Milan warns Exodus on the basis of the initial scans of the mysterious figure that he is a mutant with one of the most powerful mutagenic signatures I've ever seen. So Colossus is wary. He says, outside of that we know nothing of this creature. I thought it ill-advised to bring him on board. We saw that in X-Men Prime, and I'm convinced of it now. And Milan agrees with the former X-Man, as he says. But Exodus demurs from their judgments, and he says that the two of them are fools. Did you not say he was a mutant? All the more reason to bask in the shining light of fortune's smile. You doubt and fear when we should rejoice, for fate has deemed it fit to send us a brother, a kindred soul, and as I've said, a sign for those willing to see. We cannot tarry any longer. So he goes away to commune with Magneto, the comatose Magneto. Now this is an interesting image. This is a good one from Paul Smith. I like that angle on the bandaged figure here in the containment tank with the liquid swirling around him. That obviously had his interest. This is an interesting angle on the ranting Exodus as well. And here we see good body language on the acolytes as they walk away, and they're looking back skeptically at their ranting leader, Exodus. So that's well done. Let's continue, and then we're left with Milan, still at the computer controls. Exodus tells him that he's got to spend the night there on watch, watching over the figure just in case he wakes in order to play host to their guest. And Milan is not on board with Exodus anymore. He reckons that their leader, their de facto leader, given that Magneto's in a coma, is truly mad. I thought that I was the only one to notice this, but if the look on Rasputin's face was any indication, then perhaps I'm not as alone as I believed. When Magneto accepted me as one of his acolytes, I expected to go places, see sights the flat scans would never see. Instead, I'm at the mercy of a raving lunatic. But I can't think about that now. Better to lose myself in the electropathy, become one with the machine, so that's his mutant power. And then we get an interesting double-page spread here, where he begins to get, his mind is flooded with images and a feeling of pure hatred and something else, the reflections of a world that once was. So we've got Professor X's grave marker there, we've got the X-Men there with Magneto, of course, Rogue, and their son Charles, and also Exodus in his identity as an X-Man in the alternative reality, a world that should never have been. So this shocks Milan, and he walks away and staggers away from it, wondering what it is that he's seen, whether it's trickery or what. And then something unexpected happens. Something gets a hold of his leg, which he can't break free from. Let's continue. And that's a nice anchor image there from Paul Smith as well. So his body begins to discorporate, and then we get this plangent narration from Nicieza. As a boy, Milan dreamed of seeing the wonders of the universe. Little did he realize that in his final moments, as nothing more than a fading crackle of energy, his dreams would come true. And as the afterglow that once was a man disappears, the lifeless form within the weakening containment unit stirs. So we have a fair guess at this point, us readers of the Age of Apocalypse, as to the identity of this bandage-wrapped figure. But then we switch scenes to Westchester County, to the X Mansion, Professor X watching the news there, the report on the incident with Juggernaut when he was punched from Canada to Hoboken, New Jersey, events that were retailed in Uncanny X-Men 322. And there's a little interview between him and Storm here regarding the massacre in the nightclub in Manhattan. And Professor X says, we must know more about this. If Warren can convince Detective Jones to share her findings with us, we may be able to locate these murderers before they strike again. And indeed, that is what happens in Uncanny X-Men 323. And Storm begins to say, if only Logan could be persuaded to join us. So this is all picking up with the continuity, the status quo continuity now in the wake of the Age of Apocalypse, all set and presented in X-Men Prime. So the Professor then calls down to Beast in MedLab. He's checking out Juggernaut, who seems to be comatose again, down in MedLab, along with Gambit and Sabretooth 2. So again, this is all part of the status quo. It's a pretty interesting image here. This is a fairly, what would I say, like a fairly lean looking Beast. He's not as hulking a figure as maybe other artists draw him. I like the way that Paul Smith has dressed Storm there in civilian clothes. That is pretty interesting work from him. Okay, let's continue with the story. And then we have an interesting interlude set in Key West, Florida. One thing I thought as I was reading through this issue before making the video review was I just don't know about this inset little panel here. I don't think it's necessary. I think we can just have our location indicator and then this trench-coated figure walking up in shadows to the front door of this building, producing a playing card, Ace of Spades, of course, and that is always Gambit's calling card. Looks like Gambit so far, sneaking in to do a bit of burglary, but the hands are encased with ice. Who could it be? Gambit is in MedLab, comatose. So who is it? Turn the page, get past the ads. Well, it turns out to be Rogue. And Iceman says to her, I let you go as far as I could. I figured maybe you just needed to work it out yourself. I know you're having problems dealing with what happened between you and Gambit, but can you please explain to me exactly what it is you think you're doing? So, obviously in the aftermath of that kiss between Gambit and Rogue in X-Men 41, just before the Age of Apocalypse, she's absorbed his powers, she's absorbed his personality, and most crucially, his memories. And it seems to be, at this point, somewhat permanent. So this is an intriguing mystery for upcoming issues of both X-Men and Uncanny X-Men. And the road trip that Iceman and Gambit are on, or not, sorry, Iceman and Rogue, what a Freudian slip that was. Iceman and Rogue are on gets further detailed in the Brian Hitch drawn Uncanny X-Men 323, which there is a video review of on the channel. And then the scene switches to Avalon again, back to Avalon for mostly the remainder of the issue. And we have a little scene here between Rusty and Skids, and they are both of them wondering about their choice to become members of the Acolytes and whether it was wise or not. And they're tuned in to the fact that Colossus is having second thoughts himself too, and they're interrupted by Scanner, who tells Rusty here that he is required by Exodus. And so Rusty gets ready here. I like this little panel, by the way. The inverted silhouette and the marker line here. It's like a marker or an brush inked background here. It's an interesting device, an interesting effect. But in any case, back to the story. The two of them are still continuing to share their doubts, and as Rusty walks away, he thinks to himself, I don't want to see Skids at first. I don't want Skids to see how nervous I am. Exodus is always so secretive. There's no telling what he's up to. Lord, I do miss the simpler days before I found out I was a mutant before a lot of things. So he continues his thoughts on the wisdom of being a member of the Acolytes, and then he sees the figure in the containment unit and thinks less emaciated, or rather says aloud that the figure is less emaciated, almost as if he were getting better, and then the eyes pop open. So that's a great little scene. That's nice storytelling on this page by Paul Smith. And then another discorporation of a figure, and this time it's Rusty, and his hand is disappearing. So let's continue. Scanner arrives just in time to witness what happens, and Rusty's completely discorporated. So interesting by Fabian Nicieza. He builds up a little sympathy, a little connection with these characters, Milan and Rusty, both in before their deaths. So trying to wring a little bit of emotion out of these scenes. Of course, Rusty Collins is a much older figure from the X-Men mythos and continuity, and long-term readers would have maybe a deeper connection with him. And then it's revealed who this is. It's Holocaust. And Exodus arrives just in time to tackle him. And of course there is a confusion here for Holocaust in terms of what timeline he's in. So he engages Exodus as a member of the X-Men, but Exodus says, X-Man, you're sadly mistaken. But how do you know who I am? So Holocaust, in his confusion, continues with his declarations. Don't play the fool, Exodus. We've forged a bond of hatred on the bloody fields of battle. And Exodus responds, I've never laid eyes on you before, mutant. How is it then, Paris, that I know you for the pathetic gene trader that you are, a firm believer in the foolish dream of mutant and flat scan coexistence? And that's interesting because in the Age of Apocalypse we learned that Exodus's name is Paris Bennett, but his name is unknown in the Prime reality. So Holocaust continues with his ranting, and Exodus says, you know my name, quietly. No man living knows my name. I thought you a messenger of deliverance, but I now see that you're nothing but a blasphemer. So they attack each other. So we're going to get some action now at the end of this issue. I like the shot of Exodus flying towards Holocaust. That's very well done by Paul Smith. Then the consequence of their attack is a blasting out of the hull of Avalon. The hulls of this orbiting haven are rocked to its very foundations. So Amelia Vaught notices it, of course, and asks the computer for a damage report. She gets it. Colossus transforms instinctively into his living metallic form, a reflex honed by years of training as an X-Man. He's prepared for anything. Turn the page. See, the narrative here is speeding up, except what awaits him half a mile beneath his armored feet. So we have this escalating battle between Exodus and Holocaust is saying, One thing I do know, since you claimed this to be Lensher's stronghold, I have a simple question to ask before I kill you. Where is he? Where's the traitor? Because he will die at my hands, for I am the son of Apocalypse. And then we have a scene switch, briefly, to Salem Center in the aftermath of Cyclops and Jean visiting her parents to let them know about the death of her sister Sarah at the hands of the Phalanx. And then they are interrupted in their journey back to Westchester County by the arrival of Amelia Vaught. This is really well drawn by and visually realized by Paul Smith, who teleports them using her mutant powers to, well, where's she going to teleport them to? Well, double page spread to Avalon. And Colossus says to them, Jean, Scott, Vought fled to Earth for help, but I never expected. You should not be here, my friends. In a matter of minutes, this entire station will be destroyed and we'll all be dead. And there they have the comatose Magneto as well. So that's a pretty cool double page spread by Paul Smith. So as I said, I think for the most part, he was he does a competent job on the art, but there are a few pages and there are a few panels where I think what he was drawing got his creative juices flowing, and he came up with some pretty cool images and some pretty cool angles on the scenes that he was drawing, and this is one of those here. So to be continued, of course. No letters page in this particular issue, just detailing of what is out there from the X-Book stable. How many titles again? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 this particular month to pick up. Oh yeah, and we also have the statement of ownership, management and circulation. Let's look at the numbers here. So we have very good numbers for the X-Men Volume 2. Average number of copies during preceding 12 months, 800,000. Actual number of a single issue nearest to filing date, 750,000, let's call it. So those are still healthy sales figures for X-Men in 1995, just before or just about as the comics bubble is about to burst. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on X-Men number 42. If you did, please like the video on YouTube. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.